There's a version of you that already lives the life you've been imagining. Not as a fantasy, not as a dream, but as a frequency already present in the field. You're not aiming toward it. You're already entangled with it. And what determines whether you experience it is not what you want, but the state of being you're choosing right now. This isn't about some distant future where everything aligns. It's about alignment now, before the healing, before the learning, before the waiting. If life feels like it's stuck in a loop, if your goals always seem one step away, it's not because they're unavailable. It's because your current self is still bonded to a version of you that second guesses, that delays, that repeats patterns too familiar to question. Everything changes when your identity does. Not your name, not your personality, your energetic default. Because the universe isn't reacting to your words. It's responding to who you are at your core. Most people try to shift their life by changing what they do. They force, they visualize, they chase after clarity while staying rooted in confusion. Even on the spiritual path, the mistake repeats. They try to build the future from the mindset of the past. They imagine new outcomes without releasing the identity still anchoring them to limitation. This isn't that. What we're talking about here is a deeper shift. One that deconstructs the version of you that's no longer compatible with your next chapter. At the heart of this is quantum entanglement, a law of connection that binds what's energetically linked. It's the science behind why changing your internal state doesn't just affect how you feel, but shifts the very reality that mirrors you. You're constantly emitting a signal. And that signal isn't your words or your vision board. It's your alignment, your frequency, your embodied belief about who you are. Quantum jumping isn't teleportation. It's a shift in the self that's doing the observing. It's not about pretending something different. It's about becoming someone different. And if you've ever had a moment of sudden clarity, a decision that felt like a breakthrough, a moment where something in you said, "It's time," you've already jumped. That wasn't random. It was a timeline shift. That whisper that you're made for more. That isn't fantasy. It's resonance with a future version of you that's trying to get your attention. Time isn't a line. It's a field. And your future self can influence you as clearly as you can reach toward it. You're in a living feedback loop with a version of you that already did it, already became it. And that relationship is active, whether you acknowledge it or not. Here's the truth. You don't need to try harder. You need to tune in. And tuning in isn't done with effort. It's done with clarity, with coherence, with the courage to release who you've been. So you can match the frequency of who you're becoming. Most people spend their lives trying to change what they can see. They chase goals, rearrange circumstances, chase after motivation, never realizing that the real shift doesn't start out there. It starts at the core, with the version of them that's doing the observing. Because here's the glitch. If the you that's taking action is still rooted in fear, doubt, or survival, then no matter how powerful your efforts seem, you're still creating from the same limited identity. You can't leap into your future if you're anchored to the self that doesn't believe it's possible. Quantum reality doesn't respond to intentions. It responds to coherence. It mirrors back the frequency you hold, not occasionally, but constantly. And your frequency? It's not built from your affirmations. It's made of your patterns, your reactions, the choices you repeat when no one's watching. This is why manifesting doesn't work for most people. Because they're still entangled with the version of themselves who doubts the outcome. They visualize abundance, but make decisions from scarcity. They dream of wholeness, but speak from wounds. They want love, but tolerate misalignment. The field isn't withholding, it's reflecting. And it reflects not what you say, but who you are at the deepest level of identity. And here's where it gets real. The you who already has everything you want. That version isn't separate from you. It's not somewhere else, waiting. It's active. It's pulling on the same thread, trying to reach you. And you felt it, in flashes, in dreams, in moments when reality suddenly feels thin, like something else is bleeding through. Another version of your life that feels eerily real. That's not imagination. That's your higher timeline trying to break through the noise. The more you ignore that pull, the longer you stay in the loop. But the moment you start to listen, really listen, you begin to shift. Because the jump isn't a decision, it's a death. Not dramatic, not tragic, but necessary. A letting go of the version of you that was built for survival, not expansion. Most people don't jump, not because they can't, but because they don't want to let go of the familiar self, even if that self is keeping them small. So the field stays static. The same patterns repeat. Not because life is unfair, but because the observer hasn't changed. That's what quantum jumping really is. Not escaping to a new reality, but releasing the identity that kept you stuck in the old one. Because the truth is, you're choosing who's behind your eyes in every moment. And every moment is a chance to choose differently. Let's be clear. This isn't about doing more. It's about becoming aware of who's really steering your life. Because most people think they are their thoughts, their habits, their personality. But all of that is software. The real power sits behind the scenes, in the one who's choosing what program to run. And the truth is, you can reboot at any moment. This is the key to shifting timelines. Not by effort, not by pretending, but by stepping back and asking one terrifying question. Who's been choosing this version of my life? What are their core beliefs? What do they fear? What assumptions about reality are they quietly enforcing? While you go through your daily routine, feel into that question. Not with your mind, but with your body. You'll notice something. A tension, a weight, a pressure you've gotten used to carrying. That's not you. That's the residue of a version of yourself you've outgrown. And now, the real question arises. Are you willing to let that version die? Because that's what a jump really is. Not a glow-up, not a breakthrough, a death, a quiet, sacred unraveling of the self that simply cannot carry your next chapter. This is why most never make the leap. Not because they aren't capable, but because they're still attached to a familiar version of themselves, even if it's built on fear. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown freedom. People will hold on to a broken identity because they've made it feel like home. But you don't have to. Right here, right now. You have a choice. The method, stripped of hype, grounded in frequency. It's not a ritual, it's not a hack. It's a shift in how you relate to yourself at the most fundamental level. Step 1. Witness. Sit with the version of you that you're ready to let go. Not to fix them, not to shame them, but to really see them. Most timelines don't disappear because we fight them. They dissolve because we no longer match them. Step 2. Sever. Declare, internally or aloud. This is no longer who I am. I release this identity. I collapse this observer. You'll feel resistance. That's normal. The old self always fights for survival. But its power fades the moment you stop believing it's you. Step 3. Choose. Once the field is clear, pick a new identity. But don't just think it, embody it. Stand how they would stand. Breathe how they would breathe. Make choices from their frequency. Don't ask, what would the successful version of me do? Ask, what would they never tolerate again? And stop tolerating it now. These aren't steps you complete once and forget. They're a daily practice. Each breath, each decision is either a reinforcement of the old identity or an investment in the new one. And when your choices become consistent with the new signal, the field must adapt. Not because the universe rewards effort, but because quantum law is law. The observer defines the outcome. Here's what no one tells you. The version of you that already lives your ideal life. It's not some future avatar. It's not a fantasy you're chasing. It's a real energetic imprint, already stored in your field. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about removing what no longer belongs, peeling back the layers of fear, doubt, and delay, until only truth remains. And here's the catch. You're not faking it until you make it. You're feeling it until you stabilize it. That's how identity locks in. Not with effort, but with repetition, choice, and frequency. But don't expect the jump to be clean. When you shift timelines, you're not just entering a new frequency, you're disrupting the old one. And the systems around you, internal and external, will resist. You might feel emotional for no reason, disconnected, confused. It's not regression. It's recalibration. You've just installed a new operating system. And like any update, there's static. There's noise. There are echoes from the past trying to pull you back. You'll hear it. That old inner voice whispering, nothing's changed. You're still the same. That's not truth. That's inertia. It's the old code losing power. And this is where most people collapse their progress. They mistake discomfort for failure and step back into the old identity. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar. Here's how you break that loop. You anchor the new self, not with fake confidence, not with blind positivity, but by choosing to respond as your future self. Even when the world hasn't caught up yet. That's real coherence. When the bank balance still screams scarcity, and you choose to feel grounded in abundance. When your relationships still echo old wounds, and you respond from inner wholeness, not reaction. When fear comes knocking, and you don't run. You open the door as your highest frequency, not your oldest wound. Each time you do that, you're stabilizing the new observer. You're proving to the field, this is who I am now. And the quantum doesn't care about your effort. It only reflects what's consistent. Reality is listening. Every breath, every choice, every thought is a signal. And that signal tells the field exactly who to mirror. So instead of asking, why hasn't my new reality appeared yet? Ask, who have I been broadcasting today? That's the shift, not the fireworks, not the hype. The moment-to-moment alignment that separates those who visit a higher timeline from those who learn to live in it. So, you've jumped, not in theory, not in concept, but in energy. You've dropped the old identity, even if just for a moment. And in that moment, the field shifted. But now comes the part no one prepares you for. The stabilization. Because the jump is not the end. It's the beginning. And everything that doesn't align with your new frequency will start to shake loose. Some relationships will feel strange. Some routines will feel heavy. Not because something's wrong, but because the old structure is dissolving. You're no longer matching the vibration that used to define your reality, and that mismatch, it creates friction, not as punishment, but as proof that the field is rearranging. You might feel resistance, moments of emotional intensity, even doubt. That's not regression. It's your nervous system learning to live in a new signal. You change the station, but there's still static between tracks. And here's where most undo the shift. They interpret discomfort as failure. They mistake emotional turbulence for a sign they've gone backwards. But the truth, discomfort is a symptom of expansion. The old identity will always try to reclaim its place just before it dies out completely. This is when you anchor. Not by faking calm, not by forcing peace, but by making small, consistent decisions that match the frequency of your chosen self. That's how timelines stabilize. Not through effort, but through repetition. The new identity becomes normal because you stop feeding the one that couldn't hold it. And eventually, what used to feel like effort becomes your baseline. You don't try to be different. You simply are. The old thoughts, they still come, but you stop treating them like truth. They're echoes, not commands. You'll move differently, speak differently, not to perform, but because you're no longer playing the role of who you used to be. This is what true embodiment looks like. Reality begins to bend, not because you forced it, but because you're finally consistent. You stopped making decisions from lack. You stopped compromising with the version of you that never believed. You let the old observer die. And now, the field has no choice but to follow the new signal. So now ask yourself, what's one small choice I can make today that only the version of me in this new timeline would choose? Not a giant leap, not a reinvention, just one clean, aligned moment of coherence. That's how you reinforce the shift. That's how you tell the field, I'm no longer visiting this life. I live here now. And finally, this isn't about control. It's about signal. And the clearer your signal becomes, the more effortlessly reality responds. You didn't jump to escape. You jumped to remember, to collapse the illusion that you were ever disconnected. from the version of you that had already arrived. The entanglement was always active. You just stopped ignoring it. So now, live like it's real. Because when it becomes normal, it becomes true.